I would love to have Marina to share a bit more about her background. Especially Marina, we were just chatting earlier, like what keeps you busy these days?
Far too many things is the is the truth. Anyway, thank you for having me, Ines, and hello to everyone who's joining us today. I think of myself mostly as a writer because that's what I started off with. But along the way, I've done a lot of other things. I've worked in PR. I've worked with photographers on book projects, and I've led an NGO working in HIV/AIDS, and now I'm still with an NGO that helps Muslim women advocate for justice and equality in the family. And I founded a website for women who travel called Zafigo.com. Started it in 2014. And basically, it's to provide information for women to encourage them to travel, but also to give them information on how they can do that safely and smoothly. Because we realize that when they can do that, especially if they do it on their own or just with a couple of friends, it really boosts their confidence, and it helps them in every other aspect of their lives as well. And with Zafigo, past few years, except for last year, because for obvious reasons, we've had an event called Zafigo X, where we bring together all these women, and we put up really, really inspiring women who traveled for different reasons and all sorts of adventures, and tell their stories, their difficulties, as well as their triumphs. So we've had Anita Yusuf, who has motorcycled around the world. We've had Marina Mahathir, who's climbed all the highest peaks in the world. Women who travel to help communities, women who've travel on the Trans-Siberian on their own or with little children, that sort of thing, you know.
That's amazing.
It really inspires people, I think, to try, because someone else has done it. They can tell you how to do it, and yeah. Plus,
we should always challenge ourselves, right? And it's so good to see, to have role models, right, that have done it. So yeah,
totally, yeah.
I like this. Well, yeah, it's and so this platform basically. How do you cope because of COVID now? What do you provide at the moment?
Well, because of COVID, travel has become a very sensitive issue. You know, we can't be telling people go here, go there when they cannot. So we've really on the website we've tried to talk about what you can do at home. But also not to take away the aspect of dreams and inspirations as well. So our social media and all that still gives ideas of, you know, where you could go once we can go.
Yeah. Plus, hopefully this year.
Yes. And also we've also pivoted online like everyone else. And last year we started a series of panels, kind of like mini Zafigo X. We call it Hello Zafigo. And we've had all sorts of amazing women that I talk to, I have conversations with, and talking about different aspects of travel. We've even had Tony Fernandez, who's the boss of AirAsia, to talk about, you know, how is he coping with this whole thing where his planes can't fly. And he was very serious, actually. It was unlike the usual Tony I know. And plus, you know, we've had people like Yuna, the singer, and Nicole David, the squash player, who normally they would be, you know, on tour, but they were stuck. So how do you cope with that total change in your lifestyle? So that sort of thing. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, congrats for all this work. Sounds very exciting. And for those of you just joining us, today I'm in conversation with Marina Mahathir from Malaysia. And it's a great pleasure to have her because she's a very inspiring woman who's done many great things for women, actually, supported many causes. And we're going to be going through a bit more in depth with her experience. Maybe I was thinking to open really quickly before we start to the audience. If any of you wants to introduce yourself, feel free to raise your hand, and you can join us on stage to say hello and say who you are, what you do, and what you're expecting from today's session. So don't hesitate to raise your hand. You have for the little hand on the bottom. And yeah, so thanks so much, everyone. Hello, Maggie. I saw Maggie saying hello. Maggie, would you like to come on stage? If so, Maggie? Raise your hand. Great. So I think we can kickstart. I just would like to know, Marina, because you're an activist of so many great social causes like the women's rights or people living with HIV, particularly in Malaysia. For a lot of our members who are actually also supporters of different causes or even, through their business, like one question is always, how do you, make stakeholders to really support the cause you're passionate about? Yeah.
Well, I can talk about my experience in HIV, for one thing, which I did for 12 years. And it was a very steep learning curve because I never done anything like that before. I wouldn't call myself an activist or anything until I joined the Malaysian AIDS Council. And what I realized is that to really get stakeholders in, first of all, you have to educate yourself about your subject. You really, really have to know everything there is to know about your subject so that you can talk with authority to anybody who asks. Now, I think that's really important. And because we were having to fundraise quite a bit and I had to go to a lot of companies, our accounts had to be really transparent, had to be professionally managed and everything. I think that's one thing with a lot of NGOs is that they neglect this aspect of it. And I think it's really, really one of those things that you really have to get right. And I was very, very lucky. I had a real inspiration. I brought in a friend of mine who was the financial controller of Tanjong Motors, which distributes Nissan cars and all that. A woman. And I knew she had a good heart and likes to do things for charity. So I asked her to come on board, and she basically set up our whole accounting system and had very, very strict protocols and everything. And I think that helped when, we go to potential sponsors and all that, we could show them our accounts, our reports and everything, and it looked good. And I think this is very, very key to get those particular stakeholders. But the other stakeholders, the people that I actually worked for, which is the people most vulnerable to HIV, I had to learn as much as I can about them from them directly. They had to tell me their stories, and because that's the only way to build empathy. If you have no empathy for the people you work for, it just doesn't work. And the other component, of course, is government. So I had to really kind of, it helped that I'm very considered quite establishment, and I can look very conservative, and I go to meetings, and I'm very, deferential to everyone, but I try and talk sense. I try and talk with authority, and without being too antagonistic. And I think that's the only way.
Absolutely, it's really good points, and I think you're right. Like for let's say charities, right? Like having proper transparency, right, on where the funds you're raising will be allocated is so important, and obviously much more convincing because this is why you're coming to them and how they can really support.
Yeah, exactly.
More concrete, right? I would say.
Yeah.
That's great. So I think we really want to today discuss more because of what you've achieved. Is it has always been your life purpose, or what is actually your life purpose, and how did you find it?
I'm one of those people who just doesn't plan anything, or plan very little. So when I started this activist work, it really was quite by accident. That's the only way I can put it. I was invited onto the board of the Malaysian AIDS Foundation because I had experience in fundraising. And so they thought, oh, well, we need a good fundraiser, so come in. And they brought me in and they made me chair straight away, which was a shock to me because I had never checked and never chaired anything in my life. I had no idea how to conduct meetings, nothing. So I had to learn on the fly. But I can tell you that when I joined, nobody, least of all me, could have predicted what I would have become, 10, 12 years down the line. I had no idea. I had no idea how much I would grow during that whole process. So if you ask me, did I have a life purpose? Nothing that I could have articulated very clearly. I wanted to help do. So I always like to say that AIDS found me. And it suited me perfectly because I'm a Gemini. I have a short attention span, but AIDS is one of those subjects that spans across so many things. So I wasn't just talking about medicine and health and biology, but also economics, politics, law, religion, culture, all sorts of things. So if I get bored with one part of it, I'll just switch to the other, and that's how it came to be. And then the biggest thing is that I really learned how much human rights affects health and how important human rights is, and that led me on to all the other things that I've done. That's always been the perspective that I look at for every cause that I have.
And probably the fact that you said yes to that chair position, even though you were a bit scared of it, led you to find your destiny. So if we could summarize, we could say that seizing some opportunities can really be a way to find your life purpose as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I totally agree with this. So we understand that you're also a newspaper columnist, and I guess you often get censored, maybe talking about politics, human rights, religion subjects that maybe many believe you have no authority to talk about. How do you handle this kind of situation, and could you share how you handle unfairness and untrue negative comments?
Well, I started writing the column because I was invited. I mean, I was always a writer from when I started work. And then I went off to live elsewhere for a couple of years. And then when I came back, my former colleagues asked me to write the column. And originally, they wanted me to write about home and family. And, I had a little baby daughter and that sort of thing. But I sort of, again, it's one of those things I didn't plan. I had no idea what, I was going to write about in the beginning. I just started writing about things I was interested in, which includes not just home and family, but education, but also politics and health and all sorts of things. So after a while, I guess, if nobody else knows about me, I also am in a bit of a unique position because of my father.
Yeah.
My father.
It's great that, maybe we should mention this for those of our members who are not maybe familiar with your background.
Yeah, my father was for a long time Prime Minister. So when I started writing a column, people were a little bit confused because on the one hand, sometimes I sounded critical of the government, and they didn't know whether, what was I doing? Was I pro or against, or just playing some sort of game? I just wrote whatever I felt like. This is what I think about something. And it resonated with a lot of people. And then when I went to work on HIV, where I had to talk about things like condoms and drug use and things like that, some people really got shocked, and started to be quite critical about my stance. And then a lot of them also, I realized, were politicians. So opposition politicians. So I realized soon enough that I was a surrogate, that if they can't attack my dad directly, they just attack me. So I had to learn to differentiate, And again, I always relied on facts and figures and the science of things. Much like now, with COVID, like the only way you can fight is with the science. And just force them to engage in the substantive issues and not the personal, which is usually what they descend to. But I have to mention that this was in the mid-90s, and I only left HIV in 2005. So it was pre-social media.
Okay.
Which is a huge difference, because people have to read the newspaper, and it's always a day after something happened. So then it takes a while and things like that. Now everything is instant. Everything is instant, and it's just much more difficult. And the internet is just a wild place. So how do I cope with it? Basically, I don't engage. I don't engage with, not everybody. I don't engage with people who are just there to be negative. If they don't have anything constructive to say, then I just ignore. I don't feed the trolls is what they say. And sometimes, when Facebook first started, I was on it all the time, and I allowed a lot of people to be friends whom I didn't necessarily know, because I was so excited, like a lot of people. Now when I look at my friend list and like, who are these people? I don't remember who they are. And the same with Twitter. I used to wake up in the morning and scroll through my Twitter feed like, oh my God, I've missed 2 hours of things happening around the world. And nowadays, I just hardly go on, because I realize like my whole life does not have to be online. I have a life of it. I'll go when I want. I'll occasionally make a comment or two about things that I think are important, and then I leave, because it's not the place for civilized conversation. Places like this type of forum is really where you go. And I think the thing about COVID is that it's really given rise to a lot more substantive conversations about many, many subjects, and not this sort of wild, just shooting away. It's very annoying. It's not at all productive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on that note, actually, if anyone wants to ask a question directly to Marina, don't hesitate to raise your hand and we'll bring you on stage with us. But I think you're right. It's like not engaging is probably one way to sort of, focus on what's important, and obviously backing up your data, let's say with science and like actual fact, is a way as well for you to be more confident in what you're saying and sort of not adopting when someone is questioning what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can be horrible, and when people, like the other day, I wrote a column about, the COVID situation in Malaysia and how I felt that, the government wasn't doing a great job. They're quite incompetent in many ways. That's what I talked about. And I put it on, well, the Star declined to publish it because they thought it was too critical. So I thought, never mind, I'll just put it on Facebook. And it just went on and on and on. And I just didn't, I don't need to pollute my days, basically, the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think it's so important. It's so true. We only have just a few hours in a day, really, so better to focus on not the haters.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I'm sure then you might have experience as well stereotyping, and so how do you overcome such, let's say, comments that may be,
Well, for me, stereotyping has been a big issue for a long time. From when I started work, when I was female, you already get this sort of, you can't be very good because you're female. Secondly, I was very young looking for the longest time. Now I wish I was back there, but when I first started work, after university, I actually looked like I was about 18 when I was 22. So it was very hard to get people to take me seriously. So that was another stereotype. Young people can't be very good at anything. And the other, of course, is that I was my father's daughter. And somehow people are just waiting for you to fall. People are waiting for you to say something stupid, and they just assume that must be what you are. It's got nothing to do with the real you at all. So it's been a struggle. I have to say it's been tough, and the only way is just to put my head down and work. And luckily, I like working. I just work and try to be as good as I can in whatever I'm asked to do. Whether I was, writing for a magazine when I started, and then I went on to do public relations. I totally, downplayed any of the family connections as much as I could. And I mean, it is, I guess, I mean, not everybody is in the same position as me. Lucky you. But, I have a big shadow to come out from under, and trying to find my own identity was a big job, because everyone's favorite question is, what is it like to be the PM's daughter? It's like, oh God, I'm so bored with this question. I'm far more interesting than that.
This is so interesting. People ask you this
all the time. It's like, that's the number one question.
And so what do you answer them?
I say it's quite normal, actually, because I only relate to my dad as my dad, and not as the PM, unless I'm in a public role. So when I'm president of the Malaysian AIDS Council, I remember once I had to do a BBC interview, and it was about some issue that was happening here. I forget what it was. And they were interviewing me as president of the Malaysian AIDS Council. And halfway through, this guy from London suddenly says, well, what does your dad think about it? And I'm like, excuse me, the president of the Malaysian AIDS Council has no father. And that's the only way to shut them up, because I mean, they don't, nobody asked my brothers this question.
Yeah.
It's a very sexist thing. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is still happening in 2021.
Absolutely.
So I'm also wondering, like, how do you not care if someone dislike you then?
Well, it depends. If it's someone I don't know, really, I mean, I have a very small circle of friends that I love and I trust, and if they think I'm doing something wrong, they will tell me and I will take it from them. But outside of that, people I don't really know, I don't really think about, I don't worry about it. I don't think you can spend your time worrying about what every single person thinks of you. It is, you'd go mad. You just go mad, because if you had 10 people in a room, all 10 would have a different idea of you. And the thing is, I know that the public out there, what they know of me is just what they read, and what they might see in the papers or on TV or whatever. It's not necessarily all of me. I'm a lot more than just that. When they see me speaking in public, it's just one aspect of me and not everything. So they're judging on a very tiny sliver of me. So do I have to care about that? No. I mean, it's hard if you're young. I think at my age now, I've grown quite a thick skin. But I sympathize with a lot of young people who find it much harder, and it's something that you can only learn with time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not only young people. I think we see this as well quite often with women, maybe who are considered a more caring type. So we always have this tendency to make everyone happy in the room and trying to get approval, really.
Well, one of the things that has concerned me is the internet and how hostile it is for women. We see that women, when we talk about anything other than the usual feminine subjects, invariably we get far more hostile feedback than men. Because we're supposed to go and stay in the corner there and that's it. And so I've seen some really, really vicious things on women, and it's always personal. Like if you're too fat, or your English is not so good, or whatever, that's what they pick on instead of the substance of what you're saying. And I think men don't get that so much. So the sad thing is sometimes women do it to other women too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. So what's your advice really for, I would say, victims of such attacks?
I think it's really important to find your support group, and it's okay when you get attacked to not respond. I just get off it. There's no obligation, because these people are there for their own entertainment, and therefore you shouldn't be helping them have fun. So yeah, you should just get off and find your support group. And I really think it's important that women stand in solidarity with each other, because you never know when you're going to be the next victim, because you never know what's going to trigger off people. It could be something so simple. I mean, we just had I think yesterday, a few days ago, one local pop singer or actress, I think, who said that she didn't like K-pop, and oh my God, the entire K-pop fan world descended on her. And you're not allowed to have this opinion. Why? So yeah, it's really, it's nasty, and I think there should be more done to not censor, but to really mitigate this type of bullying. All it is it's online bullying, really. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that can go offline as well. That can go offline.
Yeah, could you share a bit more about your women's rights fights? Maybe like some of your victories, maybe as well.
Well, I belong to a group called Sisters in Islam, which is a group of Muslim women who are fighting for justice and equality in the Muslim family. And basically, we are looking at family laws, marriage, divorce, inheritance, guardianship, all that sort of thing. It's peculiar to Malaysia, really, because in Malaysia, there are different sets of laws for Muslims and non-Muslims when it comes to family laws. And we find that Muslim women actually have less rights than non-Muslim women. So we've been fighting that. We've had some victories. It all started with the Domestic Violence Act, the campaign for the Domestic Violence Act in the 90s, in the late 80s and 90s. And some people said that, okay, you can have this law, but it cannot apply to Muslim women because Muslim men are allowed to beat their wives. And we all were like, what? And so we started working on that, and found that this was not true. That this was a particular interpretation of the Quran that men have been using to really pull the wool, I think, over a lot of people's eyes. So we fought that, and after 6 long years, Malaysia became the first Muslim country in the world to pass a Domestic Violence Act.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and since then there have been others in many other countries, and we also, because of the way we work, it was kind of unique because we were working through the religion. We consider ourselves feminists, but we are working through the religion, and it has spurred similar movements around the world. So now we have also established a global movement for justice and equality in the Muslim family. It's called Musawa. Musawa is Arabic for equality. The headquarters is in Malaysia. And we are working with the UN. We are, showing examples that there is often what is considered as Muslim law can be very different from one Muslim country to another. So, how can you say that this all came from God? It's obviously made by human beings, and therefore can be changed by human beings. So there have been some successes. We've been in court so many times here in Malaysia. We had a book ban. We managed to get that off by fighting all the way to the federal court, the Supreme Court. Now we are still in court because one of the states is trying to ban us completely. So we're very familiar with our courts now. But the fact is that we've been around for more than 30 years, so we must be doing something right.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really inspiring, and it's great to see that you're making actual social change, right? So we have a question from the audience.
Okay, great.
Liana doesn't want to come on stage with us, but I will ask the question for her. What do you think of cancel culture? Can that improve activism? Example, deplatforming sexual harassers, or regress it?
This is a very, very difficult subject because With the Me Too movement and everything, I can understand why we should not give platforms to abusers, harassers, and all that. I do understand that. But and I think those people shouldn't be given platforms. Those, especially if they have been on trial and been, charged with things. I mean, we had someone who's been convicted, not for harassment, but for corruption. And he was on TV the other day, and I don't understand that. I mean, since when do you put a convict on TV, to talk about as if he's got any say in policy at all? But I've seen that this whole deplatforming has been extended for all sorts of things. And I think we need to balance it with the freedom of speech. People can have opinions, but to cancel people totally for something that sometimes they said ages ago and may well have changed their minds about, or a particular opinion, to me, I don't know, I'm a bit concerned about it. I always feel like my friend and fellow activist says, at our age, we've been at this for so long, we are just this bit away from being cancelled by younger activists, because we don't even know when we're going to say the wrong thing in the judgment of someone younger, as much as we try to learn and all that. So I'm very concerned about this type of very quick, canceling of people. And it's like, how do you get decancelled? There's nobody talks about how do you make restitution if you need to. How do you come back from that? Is it forever? And say someone like J.K. Rowling, who is being cancelled all over the place because of her views about transgendered people. I mean, I don't agree with her views at all. I really don't. I cannot understand this. But it doesn't mean that those books that she wrote didn't give so much pleasure to so many people. And, so I'm a bit, I don't know. I really, the right wing is using the cancel culture thing to their own purposes, which I don't like, but it's still, in a way, censorship has always been like cancel culture. We've all suffered from it for a long time. So what is the difference, between these two? Is not entirely clear to me right now. I mean, there's a lot of despicable people talking out there whom I don't like, so I just won't listen to them. That's all. But I don't think I'll stop them, go out there and tell them they can't talk.
Thanks. I hope Liana, this answer your question. Anyone else for questions? We're happy to either take them from you, and or if you want to come on stage to join me with Marina, you are very welcome. I think we've been talking of so many interesting topics, so it's great to see you've achieved so much for women, and you are still achieving so much. Maybe if you had an advice for, this is a bit more in depth, deep, but for people who lost hope in life, what would be your advice?
I'm not a counselor, so I would be a bit worried about people who lost hope or people who feel like giving up.
It's more in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know how things can feel really bad. First of all, I think if it's been very hard to get out of it, then definitely seek professional help. I really think there's no stigma in going to a therapist or counselor or something. I think sometimes, you need a kind of a neutral voice to sort things out for you. But, I don't want to delve into cliche, but really, there wouldn't be light if there wasn't dark, So that things always do have a way of coming out of it. That's what I found, that when things are horrible and bad, there's sometimes you have to go through it to get out the other side. You can't avoid it. I think the worst thing is to try and sidestep any issue that you face, because it doesn't solve it. It sometimes can make it worse. Or to hide it completely, I think does nothing for your mental health. But I find that if you break down a problem into smaller bits, it's much easier to handle. And just one by one, I think most of us don't live in the type of repressive society where if you do anything wrong, you're going to be whisked off and disappear. So most of us do have that freedom to sit down and work things out, either on our own or hopefully better with somebody else. So I think that, there's always a way out, that giving up hope is not really an option in the societies that we currently live in. But and I think we're still often quite privileged in the resources that we have access to. So yeah, reach out. I think groups like yours, FEW, few. I'm sure there's always someone who's been through the same thing that you can reach out to and ask. I think the main thing is not to be shy, not
Absolutely.
to keep it to yourself. Yeah,
I totally agree with you, and this is why we build this community, because we know that being an entrepreneur is not easy, and having a dream that you're trying to pursue is obviously a journey. Basis. So, well, I think we're approaching to the end of our session. I felt personally very inspired by everything you shared. I think your fights are like so important, and really we need more people like you. And I heard that you're preparing a book.
I am. I've had 3 books out already. They are compilations of my column, and I always felt that was kind of like cheating. I've always wanted to learn how to write a book from start to finish. So I went off to study again. Just a couple years ago, I finished just last year. So that's one lesson. It's never too late to go back to school. I was the second oldest in the class. So I went to do a master's in biography and creative nonfiction in the UK, and to learn how to write a book. So right now I'm writing a memoir.
Great. That is something we can't wait to see.
Finally answer that question. What is it like to be the PM's daughter?
Yeah.
After that, hopefully nobody will ask me again.
Then it would be a statement to show them that you're much more than this. And it's great that you've been able to share this with us today. So thanks everyone. We're going to be obviously this, you'll be able to rewatch this. And of course, if you have more questions in the future for Marina, you can reach to us as well. Marina, thanks so much for your time. I know you're very busy, so we really appreciate it. And we hope to see you again soon.
Yes, me too. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.